Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Welcome to our fellowship. I'm Judy McDonald, and I'm giving the service today. Excuse me. What does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist? The UUA website defines it as, we are people of all ages, people of many backgrounds, and people of many beliefs. We are brave, curious, compassionate thinkers and doers. We create spirituality and community beyond boundaries, working for more justice and more love in our lives and in the world. And this from another Unitarian Universalism site. Unitarian Universalism is a theology, liberal religion characterized by a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Unitarian Universalists do not share a creed, but we are united by a shared search for spiritual growth, and by the understanding that an individual's theology is the result of that research and not a result of obedience to an authoritarian requirement. So now is the time for announcements, if anyone has any. I guess no announcements. All right, we'll move on to our lighting our virtual chalice. Actually, Mary has a chalice. So I'm going to share some words from Emily Quarles' mother. She spoke, she was I'm sorry, I just can't talk this morning, Unitarian minister. So Mary, if you want to light your chalice now, I'm going to quote Judy Quarles. A community of faith. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. And our opening words this morning are a couple quotes, two quotes. We all grow up with the weight of history on us. Our ancestors dwell in the attics of our brains as they do in the spiraling chains of knowledge hidden in every cell of our bodies. That's by Shirley Abbott. And Ralph Waldo Emerson gave us a wonderful quote. Every book is a quotation, and every house is a quotation out of all forests and mines and stone quarries. And every man and person is a quotation from his ancestors. Again, that's Ralph Waldo Emerson. So Carly, if you would play Here We Have Gathered, Carly's gonna play for our first hymn. Thank you so much, Carly. And now I'd like to read a poem by Kenji Miyazawa, given to me by my very good Japanese friend last year, but I think it really fits about Unitarians and life in general. This is called Unbeaten by Rain. Unbeaten by rain, unbeaten by wind, unbowed by the snow and the summer heat, strong in body, free from greed, without any anger, always serene. With a handful of brown rice a day, miso, and a small amount of vegetables suffice. Whatever happens, consider yourself last. Always put others first. Understand from your observation and experience. Never lose sight of these things. In the shadows of the pine groves in the fields, live modestly under a thatched roof. In the east, there is a sick child. Go with him and take care of him. In the west, there is an exhausted mother. Go there and relieve her of her burden. In the south, if there is a man near death, go there and comfort him. Tell him, don't be afraid. In the north, if there is an argument and a legal dispute, go there and persuade them it is not worth it. In a drought, shed tears. In a cold summer, carry on. Even with a sense of loss, being called a fool, being neither praised nor a burden. Such a person I want to be. Now I invite you to relax for meditation and silent reflection by reading the Yew Tree Path. Kindling the Celtic spirit, ancient traditions to illuminate your life through the seasons. This inner journey will take you to meet one of your ancestors. The ancestors may be of your bloodline, from a past incarnation, or simply a spiritual ancestor. He or she will be someone who has influenced your spiritual life or shaped you in a positive way. Do not choose who will appear. Let the choice be made for you. Close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. See before you a long avenue of ancient yew trees. Their branches have spread over the centuries so that now they entwine to form an arching tunnel, so densely interwoven it appears completely black, except that at the end you can see a small circle of pale yellow light. As you take your first steps into the tunnel, become aware of stepping beyond present time into the deep, ageless realm of the yew trees that stretches before the dawn of time. Feel the power of the underworld embodied in these dark tree beings as they brood upon the wisdom of the deep. After what may be a short time, or a long time, or no time at all, the pale circle of light at the end of the tunnel is growing bigger and shedding a glow. The interwoven branches are beginning to thin, so that you begin to see the patches of a violet blue evening sky above you. And now, at last, you step out of the tunnel and see before you a figure tending a small fire of fragrant wood that crackles now and then, sending out sparks of green and gold. On the eastern horizon to your left, a group of 7 stars is rising. You approach the fire tender. This is your ancestor. He or she has been expecting you. Approach the fire and greet this person. Notice what he or she looks like. Clothes, hair, face. Is your ancestor old or young, tall or short? Listen carefully while your ancestor tells you who he or she is and the role played in your spiritual development. Your ancestor has a gift of wisdom for you today. Sit by the fire with this person and receive this gift, which may come in the form of words or an object that is placed in your hands. Thank your ancestor for this gift, and if you have any questions, ask now. When it becomes clear that the conversation is drawing to a close, take leave of your ancestor in the way that feels most appropriate, and then walk back through the yew tree tunnel, carrying your gift into the world, into your present life. Good morning again. Halloween probably seems like a strange time to be thinking of family and friends who have passed on, as we're normally thinking about little ghosts and goblins, how much candy we'll need for the big evening. But for the ancient Celts, All Hallows Eve, or Samhain, was the time of the year when you were most likely to see your ancestors. This wasn't always a time when they wanted to see them. Honoring them was one thing, but no further than that. Here is Wikipedia's reference to the Celtic, Irish, Scots, Welsh, Great Britain ancient beliefs. Like Beltane, which is a summer festival for the living, Samhain was seen as a liminal time when the boundary between this world and the other world could be more easily crossed. This meant that the AOC, the spirits or the fairies, could more easily come into our world. Most scholars see the AOC as remnants of the pagan gods and nature spirits. At Samhain, it was believed that the AOC need to be propitiated, which is sated, given something, to ensure that the people and the livestock survived the winter. Huge bonfires were lit, and offerings of food and drink were left for them outside. The souls of the dead were also thought to revisit their homes seeking hospitality. Feasts were had, at which the souls of the dead kin were beckoned to attend and a place set at the table for them. Mumming, which is the wearing of masks, and guising, which is asking for treats, were part of the festival and involved people going door to door in costume or in disguise, often reciting verses in exchange for food. I've also learned that there were ancient Celts in northern France, and they continued these beliefs there too. The borders were different then, and it's probably because the English ruled that part of France from 1066 to 1422. Carved jack-o'-lanterns were in fact originally made from turnips and then gourds, and lit to guide the dead back to earth and to the right dwelling. And the Celts also dressed in costumes, much as we do today. But they would have worn animal skins, masks, and other disguises to avoid being recognized by the ghosts thought to be present. It was in these ways that such beings as witches, hobgoblins, fairies, demons came to be associated with the day. The period was also thought to be advantageous for foretelling on matters such as marriage, health, and death. One tradition observed that once a bonfire had been lighted, each member of the family would throw into the blazing heap a white stone containing some mark or Kabbalistic sign. The next morning, among the charred ashes, these stones are sought, and if by chance one of them disappeared, it was believed that the luckless thrower would never see another All Saints' Day. As the legend goes, the spirits could visit this realm up into dawn's first light, and then had to return to their tombs for another year. All ancestors were invited for a visit, lest one be upset at not being welcome. Some people welcomed these spirits, and other people believed they should disguise themselves so that the spirits wouldn't recognize them and take them back to their world. The Romans finished conquering Great Britain in 43 AD, and in an effort to civilize the Brits, they learned and began to match up some of the ancient Celtic feast days with their own. On May 13th, 607 AD, Pope Boniface IV established an All Martyrs' Day in honor of all Christian martyrs. Pope Gregory III later expanded the festival to include all saints as well as martyrs and moved the observance from May 13th to November 1st. Funny how that aligns with the Celts' festival of Samhain on the last day of October into November 1st. So now is the time when you can invite a relative or friend who's passed on and whom you'd like to honor today to come here in thought and memory. I'd like to invite you now to tell us about this person if you would like to. I'm just reading what I had wrote. I didn't change this from last year. Because I had pictures then. This is the saying that I have that the Celts would have said at this time. I am the hallowed tide of all souls passing. I am the bright releaser of all pain. I am the quickener of the fallen seed case. I am the glance of snow, the strike of rain. I am the hollow of the winter twilight. I am the hearth fire and the welcome bread. I am the curtain awning of the pillow. I am unending wisdom's golden thread. It's Song of Samhain Celtic devotional. So I can start myself. Last year I brought one of my father's relatives, and this year I thought I would bring my mother's mother, who is Ethel Thurza Puck Ruppelt. And she was the only child of her parents, and her mother unfortunately died when she was 9 years old. And her mother on her deathbed told my grandmother to promise her one thing, that she would never, ever cut her hair, because that was the sign when you got older of a loose woman. And my grandmother promised. And she did not keep that promise. She figured that her mother would understand. And her father eventually remarried, but the stepmother never developed a bond. My grandmother was kind of an intrusion and never warmed up to her, no matter how many nice things my grandmother did. However, she was very interested in keeping my grandmother very safe from unwanted attention. My grandmother actually graduated from college, taught music, met a very nice baritone soloist by the name of Clarence Ruppelt. But it was my step great grandmother interviewed this young man and determined that he had no assets and he could not court my grandmother. My grandmother had to tell my grandfather. Eventually that story ended up that way. For 10 years, they saw each other at church, and for 10 years, he saved away money and got himself on the right track. And eventually, when he was 30 and she was 29, they were allowed to marry. And they had 3 children. And what happened, my grandfather's uncle helped him get a job because there was a new family going on. And every time my grandmother had another baby, my grandfather got a raise in pay. And then one day, unfortunately, my grandfather made a huge mistake and sold out some company secrets to a company who wanted to buy my grandfather's, great-grandfather's company on the promise that he would have a very prominent position in the company. And that didn't happen. As soon as they bought the company, of course, he got fired. And then his great uncle would have nothing to do with him. And so they went from living in one of the mansions in Pittsburgh to living in a farm. And my grandmother, who had been part of high society, having to scrub floors and get a cleaning job to make ends meet. But she did this with grace and skill. She played music. The whole family, my uncle, aunt, and mother were raised to play many different instruments and sing. And it was a happy family. Despite what happened through life, they were very happy together. So that's my story of Ethel. Who would like to go next?
Okay. I've been all over the map here, but your story reminded me of Evil Steps. My mom's dad, his mother died when he was, I believe, 6 weeks old of, I think it was, I can't remember, it was rheumatic fever or something like that. And I have the handwritten, black lined letter that his father wrote to his sister about how he had lost his precious wife. And I think they'd been married for maybe a little over a year. And he had his precious babe, who was my grandfather. And this would have been 1881. And he married a woman, and I can't remember her name, and that's probably on my mother throwing a block because she wouldn't want me to. But this woman, and he married her, I think, when she was 16 or 17, because he needed somebody to take care of his baby. And they ended up having 6 sons. So my grandfather was the oldest, the first son of 7. And this family had a fair amount. They were in Western Missouri, over in they were in Richmond, Missouri, over on the western side near Kansas. And they had a fair amount of land and were fairly wealthy. And Grandpa went to college. He got his MD in Missouri. I can't remember the name of which school it was. And they paid for that. And when it came time for his father to write his will, the evil stepmother made sure that his will was written that only her 6 children were allowed to participate and get any of what was in there. And because he'd had his education paid for. And that was her rationale. And the way it was written was that if any one of the 6 other ones objected, let me start over. The way it was written was he only got a piece if all of his 6 brothers agreed. Otherwise, they split it all. And they had one brother said no. 5 of the 6 said yes, he could. So Grandpa never got any of that. And when we were in Richmond, we had never been before. My sister and I, we'd always gone to my father's very boring hometown of Norfolk, Nebraska, but we'd never gone to Richmond, which was a much more interesting place. I mean, their neighbors down the road, literally like 3 miles down the road, were the James brothers. And they had, so we actually went because we were curious, and we found the will and we found the assets, and we're like, there was actually under $100, but there was land and lots of land that was split up. And my mother, and he just resented so much. My grandfather resented so much. I never met him. He died 4 months before I was born. But how the fact that things were much harder for him growing up because she couldn't stand him. It was all about her 6 boys, but he overcame. He was an MD, and he was one of the few MDs in that area who would actually deliver Black children. And so he had a lot of children named after him because he was the doctor that would deliver them in that part of the world. They moved to West Virginia for a year. The whole family, when my mom, all of her siblings, and they went, "Nip, we don't like this here," and they left and they settled in Wisconsin, where he worked as a doctor during the Depression and everything. And they were one of those. It was interesting. Like my sister, my neighbor Macy, had an assignment one time where she was supposed to interview people who had grown up during the Depression. And my mother's story was so different because her father was employed by the state the whole time. So he was employed by the state at the Wisconsin State Hospital for the Criminally Insane in Waupun. And they moved back to Richmond after he retired. And when he was dying, the brother that said no in the will came to him and said how sorry he was that he had done that to him. And my grandfather was in a wheelchair at the time, and he turned his back on him. And I thought it was very sad that there were all these brothers that by the evil stepmother could not become a family. And we know my mother knew some of her cousins. I know nobody over there. And there were 7 kids and they all had multiple children, and I know none of them. And I think I just think it's sad that there's a huge chunk of my family I know nothing about.
Well, thank you for that.
Made some semblance of sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you think about, he was one of the few doctors to deliver Black children. My grandparents, at the end of their lives, they actually ran a daycare school in Gulfport, Mississippi. They were the only one in the area that would allow Black children to intermingle with whites. And all the parents were told, we accept Black children. This is down the South. And he actually had, they're more progressive parents, because I remember visiting them in the 50s, and kids don't care about color. Adults care about color. So we were playing all over the place, my brother and me, with, just other children that had darker skin, but who cared? They were fun.
Well, there are pictures of me in what would be daycare. It was actually my babysitter. I'm the only white kid in the room, and my babysitter, because my dad was at the University of Chicago. We're on the South Side. So,
that's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share? If not, we're going to have a shorter service.
I have someone I'd like to invite.
Great.
Can you see?
Oh,
That's
gosh,
my
she looks so
grandmother.
much like you.
That's my grandmother, Alice.
Gosh, you're like twins.
She, that's a picture of her in her graduation gown when she graduated from Teachers College in Nova Scotia. She was a granddaughter of Mary Bryden, who was the little girl that was brought from India at the age of 6 to Scotland as an indentured servant or whatever. And then went to Nova Scotia when she was released from that, and with James Bryden, who was a Scot, and they settled in Nova Scotia. So when Alice married my grandfather was disinherited. They left Nova Scotia and went to Boston. And so recently my aunt went to Nova Scotia to find out why that happened. And of course, my aunt has died, so she doesn't know this, but I had the genetic test done. And so it turns out that that's how we learned about Alice's grandmother being from India, along with some research on the family, whatever it's called, ancestry.com. So anyway, so no one knew why it was because nobody talked about it in the family that came here. No one talked about it and no one knew. So we needed to find out. And my aunt went back and asked all of the people she knew in Nova Scotia who were her father's family. And nobody would say why. So we aren't positive, but we assume it's because Alice was descended from someone of color. We just assume that. But they wouldn't refuse to say what it was. So that's all we know. But anyway, Alice came here. They entered illegally, and my mother was an illegal, what was called an illegal alien, and didn't know she was illegal. But Alice never worked again. She never taught again when she came here. And I'm not sure why. But at the age of 36, she died of breast cancer, as did her sister within a year or two. And I never met her. And that's Alice, who had a bit of a rough life, I think. And so I wish I had known her. I hear she was a sweetie pie.
Well, that's a woman of determination to go through all of that.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Hard life.
Still move on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your picture reminded me, for my mom's 85th birthday, I did a book on her side of the family. And I made a copy of it, and it has all of it goes down on her side of the tree. And those are her parents there. And so that's grandpa. Oops, there we go. Grandpa there. And then my grandmother. Like I said, I never knew him. And, but, we've got all these family pictures, and I did it for everybody. And there's, let's see if you can see, quite a distinguished looking gentleman.
Mm.
And so I was going to do it as a surprise, but I needed Mother's help. So, but anybody, I enjoyed doing it. I found out a lot of things, and we've got us going back here to, I think, on that side of the family to the 1730s here in Pennsylvania.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And your mother probably was really happy to share whatever she knew with you.
Oh yeah, it was fun.
So I have somebody I'd like to invite.
Great.
I've been working on my genealogy project on ancestry.com for the past couple of days because I'm trying to distract myself from, the world. But I was looking at Rick's side of the family, and Rick's grandmother was a bit of a mystery because she was not raised by her parents, but raised by a person, and I didn't know what the connection was, but I did a few months back figure out the connection. It was her aunt that took her on. It wasn't just somebody that randomly adopted her, and I'm assuming her parents died. But because through that figuring out that connection there, one of the things I found out was about this little can you tell me? Oh, okay. So this little girl right here,
Oh,
name is Mary Claire, and
Aw.
she was born in 1911, and
18.
she died in 1917. So before the Spanish flu. She probably died of one of those childhood diseases, diphtheria and all those things they didn't have any vaccinations for yet. But I don't know what she died of, but she was the first child. She's Rick's second cousin. I have figured out. But all that remains is a couple of pictures of her. And it makes one think about all of the stories that go into your family, and you don't have anything except small pieces. And this cute little picture of this little girl is all that's left of her. But I think about being a mom and the anguish of your first child living to the age of 7 and then passing away. It was just, she probably carried that with her the rest of her life. And here we are many years later, 120 years later, and all we've got is these couple of photos of a completely adorable little girl. And so I that's who I wanted to invite today, because I like thinking about remembering people like that and what their stories might have been.
I like that too. Yeah, my great-grandmother had 7 children, 5 of whom survived. And at the family cemetery, because we go out, that's where my parents are now. It just has little lambs. There's a grave marker. There's no name. There's nothing. We have baby 1 and baby 2. And there's 2 little lambs, and we know nothing about them. It's just that they died very young. No pictures. And it's, I would love to have it, when everybody is done. You guys really have led me into the final part of my talk. So whoever else wants to go, and then I have my little soapbox spiel about writing stuff down. Would anyone else like to contribute? Let us know about their relatives, ancestor. Okay. Let me get back to my computer now. All right. This belief in having the spirits come back to you to visit, for good or for bad, is incorporated in cultures around the world and has even made it into Showtime. I'm sure everyone here has seen the film Fiddler on the Roof and has seen the scene of Tevye telling his wife about his great-grandmother Zeitel coming back to him in a dream. Tevye did a great job of playing on his wife's superstitions, and she truly believed in the possibility. It's just a funny example, but there are a myriad of stories of the different cultures and their beliefs in this matter. I would make one request of you all. Write your stories down so that the generations to come can enjoy them too. Talk to your living relatives. Hopefully they won't be like Miranda's relatives and refuse to talk. Talk to your living relatives to get their special stories and write them down and tell your children and your grandchildren and other relatives about what you told us here today. Put photocopies of photographs in it too, and identify everyone you know in the photo. Mary's so lucky that she could do that with her mother, and she probably learned a whole heck of a lot more because her mom helped her. You may only know back to your grandparents, but that's a start. Just start writing. I actually know more about my Irish family's history through the generation than most of my Irish cousins do, because my part of the family wrote things down. You'll be amazed at the conversations at the dinner table this will spark, and how the kids will probably forget their cell phones, us too, for at least a while. Maybe the adults will too. This is how you honor your relatives, friends, ancestors through the years, by remembering them. Don't let their stories or your stories be lost. I don't believe that we will truly be gone until one day we are forgotten. But then, if you don't want to do all of that work, as it is a bit of work, and all of us who have done it, Erica especially knows right now, Mark Twain had a very prescient suggestion. Why waste your money looking up your family tree? Just go into politics and your opponents will do it for you. All right. Now it is time to let your special guests go back from whence they came when they were exploring the universe. I hope their spirits will inspire you to start remembering and start writing. This is meant to be said on Samhain to send the souls on their way, hopefully well sated and well satisfied. You are going home to your home of winter. You are going home to your home of autumn, of spring, of summer. You are going home to the land of the living, to the restful haven of the waveless sea. Peace of the seven lights be upon you, beloved. Peace of the seven joys be upon you, beloved. Peace of the seven loves be upon you, beloved. On the breast of the mother of blessings, in the arms of the father of life. You honor the people in your life who have passed on by remembering them. Your families will honor you by remembering you. You, your grandchildren and children, friends, relatives, others will keep you alive as you do the same for them. As my mother said, God gave us memories that we might have roses in December. Be part of continuing your family's stories and therefore histories and her stories by helping them into the future. Carly, would you play our closing hymn, Let It Be a Dance? Carly, thank you so much. Your playing is awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You are awesome. I'd like to close my program with a benediction. It's a Celtic blessing, unknown source, attributed to being Scottish. May the blessing of light be upon you, light without and light within. May the blessed sunlight shine on you like a great peat fire, so that stranger and friend may come and warm himself at it. May the light shine out of the two eyes of you like a candle set in the window of a house, bidding the wanderer come in out of the storm. And may the blessing of the rain be on you. May it beat upon your spirit and wash it fair and clean, and leave something there, a shining pool where the blue of heaven shines, and sometimes a star. And may the blessing of earth be upon you, soft under your feet as you pass along the roads, soft under you as you lie out on it, tired at the end of the day. And may it rest easy over you when, at last, you lie out under it. May it rest so lightly over you that your soul may be out from under it quickly, up and off, and on to its way to God. And now may the Lord bless you and bless you kindly. Amen.
Amen.
Mary's going to extinguish the chalice, and I will say these closing words. We extinguish our chalice flame, and you can join me if you would like. We extinguish this chalice flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. Amen.
Amen.
Carl, if you want to play a postlude, I never asked you to. You don't have to. But I thought we could move on to coffee hour if I don't know whether Carly would like to play. If not, it's okay. I never asked you to. It's okay. So actually, I have to tell you, my headache's feeling better. I've been in the bed day and night, but I'm actually feeling better. So I'm glad